Moving into Aquarius, we are dealing with a really slow moving outer planet, Pluto. Pluto takes about 244 years to go all the way back around to where it was, which means that it hasn't been in Capricorn for a really long time. And even though it is moving out of Capricorn, it's going to move out real slow and it's going to retrograde back in. And then it's going to go out and then it's going to come back in. What does this mean for you? This means if you have anything at the last degrees of Capricorn, the beginning degrees of Aquarius, your world is getting rocked and shaken and upstirred. And there's things that you're being asked to release and let go of and transmute and transcend, and it is uncomfortable. The one thing that we can all agree about Pluto is it is uncomfortable work to work with. So if you have a strong Plutonic placement in your chart, you are going to be someone who deals with a lot of like the dark underbelly. Here's some key words familiar to you if you have a strong Pluto placement in your chart. So Pluto has to do with kind of the villain energy, the deep dark, the bringing things to the surface. It can have to do with power. And so if you have a strong, depending on where Pluto is in your chart, if you have a strong Plutonic placement, it can mean that actually you've had times where you felt powerless. And then the other can be true too, where like everybody looked to you for help and wanted you to be powerful in a time when you were really young or at an age where you weren't really ready for it. So Pluto has this very interesting energy to it where if you know someone who has a strong Plutonic placement or has a lot of Pluto energy, which Pluto rules Scorpio, so it can also be kind of that Scorpio energy, which is to say there's things happening below the surface. Someone who just generates power and magnetism. So something that we say, like if you have ever read, I loved reading with my kids, The Lightning Thief, and they talk about the children of Pluto were able to bring up gems from the earth. And that's something that really stayed with me and is so Plutonic. It's like, we tend to either put things in a category of good and bad, right or wrong, light and dark. And Pluto's like transcends all of that, right? And it's all about alchemy. It's all about transformation. And in astrology, we talk about Pluto being your pain from which you access your power. And if you're not willing to go into your pain, if you're avoiding or you're numbing or you're not able to go into the depths, you won't really get and exercise what true power is on this planet, what true power, not like the artificial power, which we're seeing a lot of in our world right now. And I'm going to talk about that with Pluto and Capricorn, but the true power. And that comes from being able to go into the depths of the pain, go into the depths and the darkness and bring light to it and bring it to the surface and bring it into your awareness. And this is all the work that I do. And so if you're interested in working together, reach out. It's such amazing work because it brings you to your authentic power as a human and no artificial power, right? So Pluto has been in Capricorn since 2008, and there's a lot of different movements and a lot of different things that have been happening since then. And we also know that it has been the return in the United States of the birth of this country, like the OG. And it's interesting because in the last few years, we've seen a lot of rise of like the patriot movement or like coming back to that like love of country. And there's been a lot of issues around that for a lot of people. And there's a lot of other movements that I want to talk about. So the Occupy Wall Street movement, the Me Too movement, Black Lives Matter, and then, of course, worldwide, we have had things, the Arab uprising, all of these things come out more and more about like the systems that have like appeared to be about liberation or appeared to be about justice, but really having some like darkness to them. We know that during the some of these movements, there was a lot of money being moved around and a lot of money like not going to the places where it was promised to go and things like that. So we'll come up with Pluto in Aquarius having to do with technology and the darker underbelly around that. So for now, as we're in this transition time, you really want to look to your chart and see where these end degrees of Capricorn, beginning degrees of Aquarius are for you, because it is a slow process. Pluto only moves 1 to 3 degrees a year. And so if you have things there, then they're going to be lit up for the next year. So this is why it's so important to do this work, and because it is such a great time to dive into the chart and do the deep somatic work about what this process has been like for you, what has gotten kicked up specifically in this last year, but over the last few years, and then moving forward, what possibly could be there for you to work with and have awareness around going into it, so that it doesn't surprise you as much, and that you're doing kind of the underground work to prepare for that. So the other thing that happened, obviously, with Pluto and Capricorn was that a lot of rich people got a lot richer, and a lot of people with clout or with already, like, we saw a lot of like oligarchy, basically. And we saw a lot of people that came from wealth, building more wealth, more billionaires were made, money was moved around. And the thing about it being in Capricorn was it was a system. And so a lot of bailouts happened that were through the government, and a lot of things happened like during the COVID time period, where it was looking like it was for the people, for the system to work functioning and all these things. But in reality, there's a lot of different money and resources being moved around, and a lot of consolidation of things. So one thing I will say, coming from pre-2008, of being pretty aware of what was happening politically, environmentally, different things that were being kind of held off around mergers, or there was less checks and balances on things, more things were being pushed through, more of a shush. And you would think, with all the exposure that we have and the capability that we have around technology, that more people would be aware and more people would be doing things to create those checks and balances, or to create something that was for the people, by the people. But actually, in this evolution of Pluto and Capricorn, I believe the opposite happened, where in the birth of this country was about freedom and breaking away, and creating a space for life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And then what happened with this Pluto return was a lot of our fears got exposed, and a lot of people were led by their fears, and a lot of trust and faith was put into the government, and a lot of people pulled out their energy of creating those checks and balances. And a lot of corporate power was created. And now, as we move into Pluto being in Aquarius, I believe that's going to be exposed. And for better or worse, I don't know what the outcome will be, but it's going to be interesting to see. We know that with Pluto moving into Aquarius, where it will be solidly from 2024 into 2040. Oh my gosh, where's that date? I didn't write that one down. 2043, I believe. We know that when that, hello, if you're just joining, when that happened last time, we saw the Industrial Revolution, we saw the Age of Enlightenment, we saw a lot of revolutionary energy. I know a lot of people will watch like the Marie Antoinette movie, but if you watch that movie, that is the Pluto and Aquarius energy. Like, let them eat cake was Pluto and Capricorn, and then the kind of downfall of that and like the people rebelling was Pluto and Capricorn. So we've been in a time period where the energy and kind of corporate America and the powers that be have been in this energy of like, let them eat cake. And now as we move into Pluto and Aquarius, that is going to be the, what is to come from that. And nobody really knows what that is. And we're all kind of creating that, right, as we move forward. But one thing to know is that there is no separation from what's happening collectively to what's happening individually. And so knowing where this is taking place in your chart shows you where you're taking part in this or where you're not taking part of this, where you're supposed to pull your energy back, where you're supposed to put your energy in. So looking at your chart and knowing where these end degrees of Capricorn, beginning degrees of Aquarius are in your chart, show you where you're having a death and a rebirth, where you're having a transformational experience, where you're having to transcend some things, where you're having to leave the past in the past and move into a new future. And specifically, personally, looking at this Capricorn house for you, because Capricorn is the public authority that you have. And the public authority that you have has been undergoing massive transformation this last 20 years. And so depending on how old you are, will let you know like how much this resonates. But I definitely feel this, you know, being born in the early 80s. So it depends how old you are. But like this Pluto and Capricorn energy had to do with your work and your public persona and what you show up in the world as. And now as it moves into Aquarius, it's really highlighting our future together and new ways of doing things and new technology and new inventions and new ways of doing work and new ways of doing your life. We saw in this last 20 years, really the degradation of these like Social Security and these different systems that the generation before, or what had been happening before, was like you go to college, you get this job, and then you get Social Security or these benefits. And now we've seen like the degradation of that in these last 20 years. And so we really have to like recreate what it is. And so many people are at a loss or confused about what they're supposed to do with their lives or what they're supposed to do with work. And I truly and fully believe that the people that are on the cutting edge of like that creator energy, that creative energy, are really feeling this the most, because they're the ones that are building that. Like if you're feeling that, it's because you're supposed to be building something new. And it really requires this kind of like unrealistic trust and this unrealistic faith in whatever it is that you're feeling. I often talk about like pre-waving things. And this is really, if you have planets and placements in early Aquarius, you're probably going to be feeling this even more, where you're pre-waving something that the rest of us or the rest of society or the rest of the people haven't necessarily felt or experienced yet. And so it's really important to dialogue with yourself, to journal, to process, to write, to create, and to keep making things, even if you're feeling like you're not being received or you're not being seen or you're not being understood. That is the indicator that you are just a little bit ahead of the wave, a little bit ahead of the crowd, and that's okay. And even though that can feel isolating, and even though that can feel confusing, it's for a purpose, okay?